Mom. Kevin. I'm ready now.
I kid. Now, Jess, I kind of want to do this a bit differently because I'm a little bit fed up with normal introductions.
Kevin,
I get
Kevin, Stum.
they make me nervous.
No, Kevin, don't worry. I'll introduce myself.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sixers icon Jess Conrad. I'm a retired sex symbol. Well, that's not exactly true. I'm a sex symbol for women who no longer care. Women fall for me because, well, to tell you the truth, Kevin, they're too old to stand up. There you are.
Blitz.
Now get ready properly. Ma. No. Ma.
Ma.
That's close enough.
Now, I want to know how you got into the world of show business. I know that as a kid, you went to the London Palladium. You saw people like Danny Carl and Frankie Lane on stage. Was there a moment, a point where you went, right, that's it, that's what I want to do? I'm going to be that.
Well, I mean, first of all, I used to go to school with a gas mask under my arm, and there'd be a few viewers, well, only a few that perhaps did that as well. And the reality of war was so awful. We had to sleep in the tubes. We went down to the Oval. I lived in Brixton, and the only way to get away from that was the cinema and the theatre. That was glamorous, that was beautiful. And I used to go to the Brixton Empress, the Camberwell Palace, and see all the iconic people. And I used to stand at the back of the London Palladium for 5 shillings and see all the great stars. And I remember that I first saw a very young Frankie Vaughan at the Kingston Empire, and he looked a bit like us. He looked a bit like a teddy boy. He had a draped suit, he had a Tony Curtis haircut. He was almost rock and roll, not quite rock and roll, but an iconic man. And that was the first time when I thought, well, he looks like us. Maybe in my dreams I could be something like that. But I mean, I never thought I'd get into show business. I didn't go to school. You didn't have to go to school in my day because they assumed that you were killed in the air raid the night before.
Oh, nice.
It was nice. And I used to go out scrumping, and I used to go to the cinema. And then the school board man came round and said, your boy hasn't been to school for 6 months. My mum said, well, he leaves every day for school. And of course, because I didn't go to school, I couldn't read or write. And I remember coming home tearfully one day to my mum, and I said, Mum, I can't read or write. And everybody used to look at me, you know, with this dunce's hat on. People still look at me now, but I'm not wearing a dunce's hat. But the truth of the matter is, I said to my mum, Mum, I can't read or write. And then what she said to me, she said, Jess, she said, you're the best looking boy in the school. Everybody's going to look at you. Who's going to look at those ugly buggers who can read or write? Yeah. That's probably not the good advice to give to somebody who can't read or write.
No,
but
not at all.
at least it got me through life. And anyway, I met somebody in the West End, not across there, called Le Grand, where I used to have coffee with Terry Stamp and Michael Caine, and I shared a
You had
flat
coffee
with
with
them.
Michael Caine?
Yeah, I shared a flat with them in Chelsea. And
You shared a flat with Michael Caine?
Yeah, we're young actors then, and I met a fella in there because at the time I was a trainee gangster. I know it sounds funny, but in those days they were the glamorous people. James Cagney on the screen, gangster. Edward G. Robinson, gangster.
So you were playing a career in crime?
Well, no, you didn't think it was crime. It was just they were so. I mean, in England we had the Cray brothers and the Richardsons, and they was on in the newspapers with blonde. I'd never seen a blonde girl in Brixton. Blonde girls, you know, and their trousers were, you could cut your hand like a razor blade. They were so sharp, you know, the crease, and they were so glamorous gangsters. And I thought, I can't read or write.
Yeah.
I'll be a gangster. And I used to go to this place here where gangsters like spivs and all that, so mixed with showbiz people. And I saw a guy there who I'd just seen in a cinema here, and he was playing the third centurion from the left in Cleopatra, and there he was sitting there. And I went, I've just seen you in a movie. He said, oh yeah. I said, how'd you get into in the show business? He said, well, you're a good looking boy. He said, have you got a dinner jacket? And because I was a bit of a poser, you know, I had a dinner jacket, and And I said, yes, because that's very important. So I went to see, he said, you can charm her, this lady, can't you, around the Film Artists Association. So I went round there, charmed her, and off I went and became a film extra. And I did that. The first film was the Douglas Bader thing. I'm all through that, you know, marching up and down. Anyway, cut a long story short, a guy came on and had one word. And I said, I can do that, to the director, I can do that. And he had his name on a chair, Bill Bloggs, whatever his name was. And he came on, hello, whatever he said, something. I said, I can do it. Oh no, he said, that's a different union, that's equity. You're a Film Artists Association. To be an equity member, you have to go into rep, dear boy, and earn £5 a week. And I was earning £7.50 then a day, which was big money in those days. I was to drive up from Brixton in my Hillman Minx. I was so thrilled, you know, mixing with all these wonderful stars and things. Anyway, so I stopped being a film extra. A lot of good-looking boys never did that because the money was good. They stayed where they were. I was ambitious, and I went off and became a repertory actor. And I got the sack because the leading man said he wanted me sacked because I was the ASM and I had the smallest part in a play. I used to come on and take a couple of words, and the leading man had all the dialogue. But he went to Charlie Denville, the man who ran the show, and he said, I want that Jess Conrad sacked. He said, why? He said, well, he said, whenever he comes on, he said, everybody looks at him and nobody looks at me.
So you were taking all the attention away
from
him?
So Charles Denville brought me up to his office. I'm a little boy from Brixton, 18. Well, we're going to have to sack you, son, he said, because the leading man says every time you walk on, people look at you. And I said, that's because, Mr. Denville, I must be a good actor. He said, no, you're a good-looking bastard and everybody looks at you. So I said, well, you know, a bit tearful. I said, well, can I have my fare home? He said, I can't afford your fare home. I said, what am I going to do then, Mr. Denville? He said, well, you better stay then. So anyway, I came back once and I got into, I did a commercial advertising the Daily Sketch, which was a very famous newspaper then, a bit like The Sun. And I stood on Marble Arch corner going, extra, extra, read all about it in the Daily Sketch. Because young boy, 18, good-looking young boy. And they were looking for somebody to play a pop star in Play of the Week. And this Daphne Shabble, the producer, said, find me a new boy we can make a star. And he said, we can't find, and all of a sudden she saw me on television. She said, who's that? He said, well, I don't know. That is the boy. So I starred in a play called Barney Day, Play of the Week. In those days, there was the Film of the Week, Play of the Week, and the London Palladium. There weren't all these channels, so everybody watched Play of the Week. And it was a big success because I played a pop star at the London Palladium, and the idea of the story was that Barney Day was the best looking guy in the world. So they said to a photographer, I want you to take Kirk Douglas's nose, Rock Hudson's ears, make a composite of all the best looking men in the world and make a face of it. And we say that is Barney Day, the new rock and roll star. He was too lazy to do that. He went home and took a picture of his young brother, which was me. So this play opened. All the kids went mad because they all saw it. All the newspapers wrote about Barney Day. And Jack Good rang up my agent. Jack Good was the Simon Cowell of that era. And he did shows Oh Boy, Wham Boy Meets Girl. And he said to my agent, I would like to make Jess Conrad into a pop star. So she phoned up, Mount Street she was in. He used to look after all the big stars then, Richard Todd, all the big English stars. Hello, darling, she said. Now, you know, darling, she said, last week you auditioned for the Young Vic, and they want you to play as cast. Now that means, darling, that you'll carry a spear in one production and have a few words in the next. But, darling, it'll be very, very good for your acting career. Or, she said, a man called Jack Good has phoned and wants you to become she didn't know the word pop because it was a new word, a pippity, and the young secretary did have no...
What year was this?
This was 59. And she said pop. Oh yes, wants to become a pop star. Now darling, what is it you want to do? Do you want to go to the Young Vic or do you want to become a pop star? I'm 18. I said, I'll become a pop star, please.
Yeah.
I went up to Didsbury Studios. I won the equivalent of the X Factor, and and I was a kind of a teen idol, they called them then, and I played the Palladium, or where I used to watch as a boy. I played the Wembley. Went all over the world. I toured with Gene Vincent Records, and that was kind of it. And then after came Joseph and all those things.
I mean, your success really kind of grew from there, and I know that you were voted England's most popular male singer in the 1961 NME annual poll. I didn't even know NME existed back then, but you must have had knickers.
NME was the magazine to be in. It was like not like OK or anything, but I mean, it was, everybody read the ME. Yeah. So that was great. Yeah, to be voted England's most popular singer.
You must have had knickers thrown at you left, right, and centre after that happened.
Well, yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, being a teenager was, but you see, it's funny because a lot of those guys couldn't handle that, and they went into drink and drugs because, you know, being a teen idol was tough. But strange enough, it wasn't like that because I was the best looking boy at school. And when I became a West End boy, a trainee gangster, if you like, now I'm an OBE, I'm talking about trainee gangster, but you know what I mean. I was a good looking West End face. So when I became this teen idol, it was just like all of a sudden it was like just a continuation of a young Jess, you know. And I know it sounds big-headed, but it was.
So what you're saying is it was always easy for you to get ladies.
Yeah, but you know,
it was never hard.
I had this, and then of course, you know, I had the world's worst record with this pullover. Kenny Everett was playing it on the radio. And
how did you feel after he voted that? What, the 6th worst record?
Yeah,
ever?
well,
did you take that on the chin? Were you?
Oh yeah, because I'm a bit. I'm not like Roger Moore, but I take my work seriously, but I have my tongue in my cheek, and you know, I do send myself up. My act is all what's the word?
Deprecating.
Good boy.
There we go.
I'm glad you're paying attention. You know, so I joined the Navy once so the world could see me and things like that. You know, all those silly things. You know, and so it's laced with all that. Because I always wanted an act like I saw at the London Palladium, like, you know, early guys that could sing and tell gags, you know, and those wonderful comedians that you learn from. So I wanted my act not to be just a singing act. I wanted it to be funny as well in the music.
Now, you worked with some big names, some legends in your career. People like Eddie Cochran, Johnny Kidd. Who did you enjoy playing with the most? And who was the worst as well? I want to hear the worst.
Well, I suppose the most iconic. I mean, they were. Eddie Cochran was a lovely boy. First of all, you see, Jack Good, who was the Simon Cowell of that era, as I said, was like a method director, and we all had images. And I said to him, because he said to Vincent, "You're the devil." He said, "I'm going to shoot you in a green light. You are the devil. You're going to wear black leather. You are evil." And I heard this, and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Good." "Yes, yes. Could I have my image, please?" He went, "Of course," he said. "You're the boy next door, walking through a cornfield, drinking a glass of milk." Oh, I said, "Thank you very much, Jack. Thank you."
So you had a clean cut.
So
image
I mean, where'd you go with that? You know, except the fact that I was the boy next door. I was the clean cut kid. Eddie Cochran, he was the country boy. So I'm on tour with Gene Vincent, and we used to do the Granada cinemas. And I went into his dressing room one day. My dressing room was all pink, you know, makeup. Always a couple of girls in there, you know, looking after me. And I thought, I'd go and see Gene. I'd never seen a belly before, and he was sitting there, little belly, a belly.
What kind of belly? You never seen a belly before?
No, I mean a poppy belly.
Oh, a big belly.
Not a big belly, but he had a little roll there.
Oh,
because I was super fit. And he had the black leathers.
Yeah.
And there was a bottle of scotch, and there was a Colt 45, a gun. A lot of the American stars brought guns over to this country.
Loaded?
And, well, yeah, I mean, in fact, his roadie upset him and he said he was going to shoot him. And he did have this sinister, he always called me Mr. Jess, you know. So I'm Jesse, Mr. Jess. And
You just don't want to annoy a guy with a gun, do you?
No,
You
not
just want to
really.
be.
And they came into my dressing room one day and they said, Gene's on fire. And I'm getting ready, you know. And I said, well, what's it to do with me? He said, well, you know, I was top of the bill then. He said, you know, what should we do? So I went, and in those days you used to have floats. And he was kneeling down and he had black leather, absolutely drunk as a skunk, because the scotch was now gone. And he had an iron leg, you know. So, and the leather was burning into the skin and the iron, and he was on, well, bebopalula, she's with those mad eyes, on fire. Didn't realise he was on fire.
Blimey.
So they finally pulled the tabs and pulled him off.
Flipping
He didn't
heck.
realise that he was on fire.
I mean,
So
literally
they,
on
but
fire.
they were iconic big people, and
Yeah.
Cochrane was a really nice boy, and you know I worked with all the guys, and it's been great, and I'm still doing it, still rocking on, and unfortunately there's not many of us left now. My dear friend Davy Jones died just recently, and
sorry to hear it.
he came all the way from Hollywood to play golf in my golf classic in Spain.
Nice plug.
That's it.
Check
The
it out.
Jess Conrad Swinging 60s Golf Classic. Ding! And he was such a lovely boy, you know. He played. I was the first. I played Jesus first in Godspell. Well, David Essex. I took over from David Essex, and then before the revival of the his band, what were they? I'm going to let you speak again now.
I don't know.
David Jones and the Monkeys.
I wasn't a twinkle. I wasn't a twinkle in my daddy's eye.
when the Monkeys, before the Monkeys reformed, you know, he was acting, and so he played Godspell. So he played a lot of the same sort of parts. And I ran the showbiz football team for yonks. And I played in goal mainly because I get to wear a different colour costume than anybody else. Always dive towards the camera. And Frank Worthington, the famous footballer, said, "You and I." He said, what was my famous thing? He said, well, I was famous, he said, because when I was a professional footballer, Frank Worthington, he said, I always had my socks rolled down. And he said, that's because I had really good legs. I said, well, what was my gimmicky then? Well, he said, you always had a comb stuck in the top of your socks. I used to have a comb up, always dive towards the camera. But yeah, I mean, everybody played. I think probably Rod Stewart is the best showbiz player of all time. Stan Boardman's not bad.
Who's rubbish?
Who?
Who's rubbish?
Who's rubbish?
Who's rubbish?
Oh, no, I can't say who's rubbish, no, because they all play for charity. When I was sharing a flat with Mike and Stan, we used to watch the television, and we used to watch the commercials. And we had a game that he'd say, it's my turn, and we used to see one of the girls on television, and we'd ring up the company and date them. And then afterwards, like boys do, so how'd you get on, blah, 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 blah. So I saw this girl in a bath. She was Miss Camay, all bubbled up. And I went, right, that's mine. And Terence said, no, it's my turn. I said, no, you had yesterday, you know, and we said you didn't get on very well. He said, okay, so I took her out, and we got on very well together. And then I did a commercial for Kenneth Hume, who was married to Shirley Bassey, and he liked me. He was on the Pink Bus, and she was on my pillion, you know, and she said to me, she said, "Oh, Jess," she said, your back's better than most men's fronts. I thought, you're due for me. Anyway, we've been married 50 years.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Kevin, that's worth a round of applause in show business. 50 years married, and the amazing thing is my wife still loves me.
Oh.
And they say, how can you be happily married to Jess Conrad for 50 years? She always says it's easy if you're both in love with the same man.
And I read somewhere that you are a king rat. Now, before I looked into that, I kind of thought, oh, hang on, he's got a sideline here, killing rodents. But that's not that, is it?
No,
You
because
raise money.
you're on the periphery of show business, Kevin.
Yeah.
You see, you don't understand. Rats, spelt backwards, is star.
Ah.
And you should have known that. You should have done your homework, Kevin. And I follow people like Bob Hope, Charlie Chaplin. I'm past King Rat now. The King Rat this year is Rick Wakeman, who's my dear friend. King Rat last year was Joe Pasquale. I had my ball. It was a great success, and a great top table, all the stars, and we raised 25,000 large coins. We mustn't say pounds as a rat. You say large coins. I shouldn't really tell you that, because unless you're a brother rat, you shouldn't know that. But there you are. I've let that out the bag.
So what do you need to do in order to be a rat?
You have to be it's the same thing as being a mason, which is what I am.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it. I don't know. I suppose a genuine good fellow. I've raised millions of pounds, and that's how I got my OBE, through showbiz football, charity golf. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and I went to Buckingham Palace, and I was so thrilled to be picking up my OBE, but it wasn't the Queen, and I was slightly. Well, you mustn't say disappointed, really, but you know.
I'd be gutted if I didn't get to meet Queen.
And it was
Philip?
It was Her Royal Highness Princess Anne, and I have to say she has a fantastic sense of humour, because she said, "I hope you're not disappointed I'm not the Queen." And I said, "No, Mum, as long as you're not disappointed I'm not George Clooney." and thank God she laughed, otherwise I'd have been in the Tower of London. But that was a great thrill for me, to get an OBE. I mean, the boy from Brixton who couldn't read or write, now I've got an OBE. And I sometimes say to people, you know, how is it that, you know, OBE, King Rat, I got so many awards for different things. World's worst record. Had a big hit record last year with 3 Steps to Heaven, a million seller. I've had the Andrew Lloyd Webber songbook. I had more hits lately than I ever had when I was a teen idol. And somebody said, "Well, Jess," he said, "you know, really, basically," he said, "you're a likeable fella." And I suppose if you're a likeable fella and people like you, it kind of works.
Yeah. How do you look back at your career? I mean, what kind of things come to mind? Because you've done so much. Do you have any regrets? Do you kind of revel in what you've done?
Well, you know, I've done some iconic things. Obviously, you know, I was the very first Joseph, and if you ask Bill Kenwright, he will tell you that I made him a millionaire. We went to his 60th birthday party, and he stood me up and said, "This is the man that made me a millionaire." My first hit show was Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and that's Jess Conrad. But it's always been full of humour. When I first took the Joseph to the West End, we went to the Sadler's Wells and the Vaudeville Theatre, long before Jason Donovan. And
did you have a picture of you and Joseph?
Oh, yes, I have. Yes.
Let's have a look.
This is Diana Dawes, the iconic Diana Dawes, who I was living with at the time, and there she is backstage at the Sadler's Wells, saying, "Hi, Jess." You can see there that I'm a little bit pumped up.
What year is this?
70.
70.
I had one dressing room, and I had 2 dressing rooms. One was a gym, and the other one was where I changed. I had a gym because I wanted a body like an American actors had in my day. English actors, good-looking boys, Dirk Bogarde, Stanley Baker, and all of those, but they couldn't take their shirts off. They looked awful, and I liked early Burt Lancaster, early Yul Brynner,
So
all
like
Tab
him.
Hunter. Everybody in America could take their shirts off,
Yeah.
but no, they couldn't, because there were no gyms in this country. If you went near a weight anywhere, they'd think you're limp-wristed, you know. And I found some weights in a school hall in Vauxhall somewhere, and every time I went home, I was followed home by a gentleman. The gyms were unknown, so I used to pump up as much as I could with my hands and blah blah blah, and then by the time I got to the 70s, you know, you could go to the gym. So I said to Bill, you know, and my gym went on the lorry because we were touring with Joseph before the set did.
No, you had a touring gym.
I had a touring gym. So the first time I'm in the West End, I'm at the Vaudeville Theatre, and my billing is fantastic. It said Jess Conrad is Joseph, not Jess Conrad as Joseph or Jess Conrad, but just. And I thought I'd get on a bus, and I'll just drive down the Strand and I'll just see my name in lights, the boy from Brixton, my name in lights. It was such a thrill for me. So I'm driving along and there's two ladies in front of me. And as we're driving along, one old girl says to the other one, "Oh," she said, "look, it's Jess Conrad." "Ah," she said, "he's my favourite." She said, "I wonder if Jess Conrad's his real name." And her friend said, "Is Jess Conrad's whose real name?" You won't need, this one, I was doing a concert the other week and I'm signing autographs and the ladies of a certain age are coming out. One looked very pensive. It's just like what the ordinary people say make me laugh sometimes. And she looked a bit pensive and I said, "Did you enjoy the show?" And she said, I said, "Well, what's the matter, darling?" She said, "Well, you didn't play the piano." I said, "You're getting me mixed up with Russ Conway.
Oh.
He's been dead 30 years. "Oh," she said, "who have I just seen then?"
Oh. And now I read on Wikipedia, and yeah, I take Wikipedia with a pinch of salt at the best of times, that you have a bit of a thing for trying to eat body parts. I think there was a guy called Hines, and you ate his nose or something. Is that true or is that rubbish?
No, it is true, but you
How
know,
much of the nose did you eat?
you know, being a sort of trainee gangster,
Uh-huh.
and it's an awful thing to say because now I'm a mature man, if you like. But in those days, there was a lot of. You know, my last film was Telstar, in which I played Larry Parnes, the man that used to manage all the rock stars, and Nigel Harman played me as a young. They wanted somebody to play me, you know, and I couldn't find anybody to play me. And my wife said, "I've seen somebody in EastEnders that looks like you." I said, "Darling, nobody looks like Jess." She said, "I know." She said, "He's not as tall." You know. She said, "But he's very much like you, darling." So he was offered the part to play me, and as a young actor, obviously he didn't know who I was, and he came to my house to talk to me. And as he walked in, he did look like me. I mean, you know, he's now playing Simon Cowell.
Uh-huh.
Simon Cowell said, "Oh, we had to get a good-looking guy to play me because I'm the best-looking man in the world." But he's
Course,
already
obviously.
played me.
Yeah.
Who's, you know, I'm smidgenly older without Botox. So, and I don't suppose he's done his homework to realise that Nigel Harman's already played me. Anyway, Nigel Harman came in. My wife's never said this before, and she said to Nigel, she said, Are you sure your mother didn't have an affair with my husband? Everybody else has." But he did look like me. So anyway, and the weird thing was me talking to him as Larry Parnes, and he's me, and coming back in the studio car, I thought, this is another iconic thing. I've been played in a movie by somebody else. So, and the whole thing was about Telstar was Joe Meek, who was then, he had the first hit record in America called Telstar. And he was a man that used to make records in his flat in Holloway Road. And he was really off the wall, a very interesting character.
What year was this?
He made records from the middle 50s up to the 60s. We were all in studios with 25-piece orchestras, you know, and he did it in a kitchen thing, and he recorded me a couple of times, and Hines thought that I was going to be his next boy, and Hines was his boyfriend.
So Hines was jealous, basically.
Was his boyfriend, Joe Meek, and apparently they slept together. I mean, I don't know. We never thought about things like that in those days. We were just the lads, you know. And this all boils down to the fact that he was jealous of me because Joe Meek had recorded me and was going to make me a star, blah, 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 usual stuff, you know. So we're doing this tour, and I jumped up on my amp on the second number. And we used to do little things like that, jump up on the amps, you know, wiggle a foot this way or do something and do all little things, arms round, handcuff ourselves to the microphones, put our leg out one side of the stage and then come on the other, get somebody with my shoes on to look, they think it's me, they all look and scream, but you come on from there, all these little gimmicks. Getting out the theatre was amazingly difficult. I used to have Moscow shoes, white Moscow shoes, and my roadie actually drove. I had Hillman Mink's mauve and white wheels, mauve, held up in a beautiful big car. He drove it up the steps of the Edmonton cinema, stopped out front, all timed. I would kick, "Do you really rock and roll, Billy boy, Billy boy? Do you really rock and roll, charming Billy?" And that was my last number. And halfway through, I kicked the shoe, and it went into the audience, and all the kids grabbed my shoe. And as they grabbed my shoe, I ran up the aisle into the car and down the steps. I mean, this was like getaway. And every night I had to think of a different getaway to get out of the thing.
Right.
So those were the kind of days, mad days. So the funny bass player says to Hines, he said, "Jess is nicking your act." He jumped up on the amp in his second number, because Hines did that as well, apparently.
Oh, okay. Were you copying? Were you?
Yeah. No,
you were?
Well, I know, probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably said, "He can do it, I can do it."
Yeah.
He thinks that's clever. You wait, you see Jess does it. And in those days, if you weren't from London, you're nobody. You know, if you came from Liverpool, because there weren't chain stores then. So if you are wearing a suit that's in fashion, anywhere above Watford Gap, get it years later. So Scotland was about 8 years behind, and this Hines, he came from somewhere, certainly not London. So in my eyes, he was like, who is he? You know, he doesn't even come from London.
How did you end up eating his nose? That's
so I'm telling you, it takes a long time to get there, because you have to get the whole thing.
The whole in context.
So he comes in and he said, "Biffo," I suppose that was the bass player, we all had names. He said, "Biffo told me you're nicking my act." I said, "Don't be a prat." I said, "We're all nicking Elvis's act." And he went, "Mah, mah, mah," and I could just see the face going, "Mah, mah, 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 mah." And I'm only a new star, a newly star. I'm only a kid, and I can have a fight. Don't let this fool you. I can have a fight. I box for South London, and I can have a fight. And so anyway, I nutted him, and he went up against the wall, and then I bit his nose off, and spits it on the floor.
Oh, Jesus!
And then, as I'm doing this, I can hear all this going, "We want Jess! We want Jess!" And I kicked him in time with the jump. "We want Jess!" Awful.
Well, at least your kicking in was in beat.
Awful. But then Hines and I became great friends afterwards, and I was very sorry about it. But we were kids, we were teenagers, and we were teddy boys. You know, it made good.
How much?
And
we did
get? Have
was
fights
it just a
backstage.
tip, or was it a nostril? How much was it? A tiny?
Well, I remember I had bits of it in my teeth.
Oh, don't! How much of it?
Quite a bit of it.
Really? Is he scarred? What was he
no,
scarred?
well, yeah,
Was
but
he
he says he just gave me these. He's quite proud of it.
Yeah. That's crazy. And then I heard another story about Frankie Howard's ears as well. Again, could be part of rubbish. It's Wikipedia. You never know.
Well, I got myself into trouble for this as well, because when I was a film extra, Frankie Howard saw me and got me into his dressing room, and so I stood in for him. That means when they do line-ups, I stood in for him, and he gave you get extra money for that. And then I picked him up in the morning and drove him to the studios, and we became really good mates. You know.
What year was this?
This was 50 something, 54,
50s,
long before
okay.
before I became anything. You know, I was just a good-looking film extra, or just a young boy, just film extra. And we were good mates, you know. And then one day he was in the dressing room, and I think he'd had a drink, and he was being a bit silly, and he dropped his trousers, you know. Bless him, I love him to death.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll frighten him.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Frankie," I said, "if you don't put your trousers on, I'm going to cut both your guinea ears off." He went, "Ooh, ooh." And that was it. I mean, that was it.
And he never dropped his trousers again?
I never dropped his trousers again, and we continued to be great friends. I just thought I'd frighten him, you know, because that wasn't the relationship, you know. Because...
you can do the gangster thing quite well. Can you do that into our camera? Just a bit over.
Oh.
Let's say you're Frankie Howard. There he is. He's just dropped his trousers.
"Frank, if you don't put your trousers on, I'm going to cut both your fucking ears off. You understand?
Yeah, the wink kind of took away from it a little bit. Made it too soft. But good attempt. And what you got coming up? What can we expect from Jess? In the next
Well,
few
you know,
months?
making movies and doing my. I'm on tour with two things. Slice of Nostalgia Pie I'm on tour with. Go onto my website. I'm doing the legendary Born. You know, I'm still doing all my charity work. I'm still doing lots of golf games and I'm really having a fantastic life. Oh, hi, this is Jess and the Ferret, and we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas. I bet I'm the best Christmas present you'll have this year. Is it going to be Christmas soon?
Soon.
Soon, it's going to be Christmas. And please God, the Ferret will grow up into a really handsome man, and I'll have another hit record. Keep buying the records. You know I love you. And before I go, I'd just like to sing you a medley of my hit. All together now. Bee-bop-a-loo-la.
Well, up above something.
Dreadful, isn't it? Dreadful.
That was great. Cheers.
What can you do?